I think this is the clearest place you'll see a difference, but the daylight may not be as great as people think. And it's not because Trump isn't likely to be much less supportive of Ukraine. He certainly won't spend any political capital trying to get big aid packages through the Freedom Caucus or anybody else. But I believe that in a second term, a Biden administration would also be trying to end this war sooner rather than later. They realize, even though they won't say it publicly, that Ukraine is not going to be able to reconquer its lost territory. It's not getting back Crimea. It's probably not getting back any part of the Donbass. So if the war continues in a second term for Biden, it's just a war in which Ukraine is getting hurt more and more and more and more. So I think, although they can't say it during the campaign, once Biden's reelected, you'll see a move towards some kind of ceasefire, some kind of settlement as well. The difference is that Biden's going to try to support Ukraine to help them get the best deal they can in a peace arrangement. And Trump, you run the risk that he would, in fact, abandon Ukraine and force Ukraine to rely only on the support they can get from Europe, which, of course, is what Trump has wanted all along, to get the Europeans to do more of the heavy lifting when it comes to European security.
I mean, Biden would be trying to engage in this policy, construct this policy with European allies, where Trump is working with Viktor Orban, his buddy who's most irritating to all of the Europeans, has been the most Eurosceptic of the European leaders. Isn't this a more existential threat to NATO, or you're not worried about that?
Well, I don't think Russia constitutes an existential threat to NATO for a whole series of complicated reasons. But you're absolutely right on this point, that Trump is fundamentally a nationalist, fundamentally a unilateralist, whereas Biden is very much a sort of globalist or internationalist. And that's our key difference. There's also the key difference in that the Biden administration has tried to frame world politics as democracies versus autocracies, the need for the former to stand together, demonstrate that they perform better than autocracies. Trump doesn't care about that one way or the other. That framing will be completely lost. If anything, he seems more comfortable with people like Viktor Orban than with most European leaders. So that, I think, will also shape his basic approach to Europe. I don't think Trump was going to leave NATO, but you're certainly going to see a less supportive America under a Donald Trump second term.
How do you think Biden has mismanaged Ukraine specifically? And I mean, this is it's a really challenging response to Marshall. There was much stronger coordination, both inside the U.S. and with NATO allies, than there appears to be today. And certainly the Ukrainians are not performing as well on the ground as they were, say, 6, 9, 12 months ago. What do you think the U.S. should have done differently, and when?
Well, I think we should have worked harder to prevent the war from happening in the first place. I think the American position when the Russians sort of attempted to coerce some kind of negotiated settlement was to flatly reject it. I understand why they did that. I don't think they took sufficiently seriously the possibility of cutting a diplomatic deal before the war started. Then the United States was not particularly supportive of the early discussions on a ceasefire involving Turkey, involving Israel, where there seemed to be some progress being made on maybe getting the war over sooner rather than later. I think that ultimately would have been better for Ukraine, better for all of us. Finally, I think they mismanaged the Ukrainian counteroffensive. We should have been much firmer telling the Ukrainians not to attempt a counteroffensive that wasn't likely to work, given the amount of training they had, given the preparations the Russians had made. And that, of course, weakened Ukraine substantially, has put Russia in a much better position as well. So you put all of those things together, I think now the Ukrainian position is much weaker than most of us had hoped it would be. And I blame the United States in part for some of those mistakes.